And good morning, everybody. I'm David Mattis. I'm the Executive Director of SAES, and I'm joined today by our Director of Professional Development, Mary Catherine Duffy. Mary Catherine, good morning.
Good morning, everyone. So happy to be here.
So I'm going to turn it back over to her in just a moment to introduce our speakers and to introduce the topic for today. Just a couple of housekeeping items. First, recordings, slides, everything that we do today will be available to you. You can access the recording in the webinar library. Any slides or handouts that we use in our webinars are always available in the document library. Members, you'll need to use your login credentials to access those. If you have any problems with your login or if you need to recover your credentials, just let Pat Blevins know in our office and we'll make sure you can access all of those. If you haven't looked at the webinar library or the document library, take a look at that. We've got some amazing resources in there for you. All of our webinars are recorded, available for you on demand. And then the document library, you can find all the supporting information as well. So if you're not taking advantage of those things, please do so. Other than that, just one more comment. The Q&A box will be the way that you communicate with us today and ask questions, or if there are things that come up in the presentation that you'd like some follow-up, just dump that question into the Q&A box, and don't worry about when you do that. As soon as it pops up, get it in there. We'll stop throughout the session today and address those, but don't feel like you have to wait until a stopping point. As a question pops up, put it in the Q&A. We'll make sure to get to it before the end of the day today. That's it for me. Thank you all so much for being with us. I'm going to turn it over to Mary Catherine.
All right. Well, welcome, everyone. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and get us started. We're so honored to have our guest speakers here today. This is such an important topic, and I just love it. I love annual fund. I loved doing it, and we're gonna give you a great roadmap to how to conduct a great annual fund. So let's just jump right in. Today's agenda, we're gonna introduce our guest panelists today. We're gonna talk through kind of a roadmap for an annual fund. And so some of you may already do this. Some of you may just we're going to throw out as many ideas as we can. We were just talking a little bit about what it's been like to do this kind of work in a pandemic. And it's likely that we're going to have a little bit of that continuing in the fall. And so we can probably throw in questions about that. If you have questions about that, please feel free to do so. After we do that, we're going to talk about making the case and kind of preparation and education. We've got about 4 phases that we like to think about when we have a roadmap for annual fund. So let me just go ahead and jump right in and introduce our guest panelists. So Lisa Davis is here. She is from St. Martin's, and she has 19 years of success in fundraising. She's been there about 8 years. And we also have Melanie Hartfield, and she's from Beaumont, All Saints Beaumont. And you may recognize Melanie. She was on our webinar for board presidents in the fall, and she was a former board president before she went to work for the school. And so we're honored to have both of you guys here. And what we're going to do is we're going to do a lot of riffing here. We're going to go through each slide, but we're also going to take time to see how these ladies do their work. And if you have questions, again, don't hesitate to reach out, put them in the Q&A box, and we will answer them. So I want to just start around the thought for why we even have an annual fund. And I don't know about you, Lisa and Melanie, but at my school, when I was at St. Albans, it was a regular occurrence that people would say to me, "Now, what are we doing? What is this? What is this?" And so I found that it was really important that we establish what the annual fund is and why we do it. We call that making the case, right? We call it the case for giving. And there are kind of 4 ways in which we make the case. The first thing is to realize that our donors need to understand why they would give to our school. The second would be telling the story of the school and why, because people aren't going to give to an organization unless they have an understanding of what the story is. The third would be answering the question, what is this money going to? Why is it? Why now? And who's benefiting from it? And then finally, showing results is absolutely critical. I think if it's your first time to do an annual fund, obviously you don't have results. But if you continually do an annual fund campaign and you never show what it's for, it's eventually going to cause a problem. So we encourage you to create a case for your constituents about why the annual fund. Do y'all have anything you want to add to that?
Well, Mary Catherine, I was going to say one thing that our donors seem to really appreciate is a concrete list of what the annual fund will be providing. And when we include that in the brochure that goes out to every family and all of our prospective donors. And we know that the funds are going into the operating budget, and those are going to, maybe not pay that dollar for that specific thing.
Right.
But it really helps our donors to see specific concrete things, that their money, it's not just going into a black hole, it's going into to pay for specific things that benefit every child at the school.
Yeah, I think that's a great point.
We've used in the past, we have been able to, choose real specific things that appeal to parents. Like we've been able to bring on a full-time police officer, which very much appeals to parents in this day and time. And this year we were able to bring on a full-time nurse during COVID, which was super important for us to be able to operate safely. And those things really appeal to, and we've had great success with people knowing specifically what their money is going to.
Yeah, I think so too. And so that kind of begs the question, well, who are our donors and what matters to them and what is their why? And so typically in a school, our donors are parents, they are alumni, they are parishioners if you're a parish day school. They can be grandparents or friends of the school. And you're right, every constituent is going to have a different perspective on why they want to give. And so that could ebb and flow as you walk through each year. Let's say you're doing something that's a little different that your annual fund dollars are going to go to. You might get more grandparent involvement, or you might get more alumni involvement. So I do think it's important to comment that there are going to be, every school is different. And so if you're not a parish day school, you're not going to have parishioners. If you are a little preschool, it may be a struggle to get alumni to consider giving to your preschool. Parents are almost always the best givers. Grandparents can be good givers, but again, every school is different and they're going to have different reasons for giving. So that brings up the next question, which is to tell the story of your school. This is absolutely critical to all constituents as we walk through why people would give. You got to tell your story. And so Lisa, talk to us a little bit about how to use branding to tell your story.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. So, at St. Martin's, I found that we had a theme for annual fund. We had a theme for our admissions. We had a theme for kind of our back to school hype, if you will. And so a couple of years ago, we decided that let's build all of this into one brand, one theme for the entire school year. So annual fund campaigns are great opportunities to share the exciting things that are happening at your school and to showcase all of the great work that's taking place in the classrooms. It's also a great way to unite the community in support of the institution. So when we determine our theme, we build a brand look around it. And then we use that throughout the school year. So we use that theme. This year, it's Seize the Moment. So we use that to kick off our school year. We use it for our admissions. We have hashtags. And then, of course, we use it to tell our annual fund story. Seize the moment to invest in our school and make a difference today.
Yeah. So I love that, because I think you're right. I think we all do that in our schools. We have a theme for the back to school, and then we have a theme for Thanksgiving, Grandparents' Day, and then we have a theme and it's a lot. And so the idea around, combining all of that under one theme, I think is really important. So the next thing you want to do is you want to answer some questions. And this kind of speaks to what Melanie was talking about. What is my donation going to be used for? Who will benefit? Why now? some tactical questions about how can I give. It's really important that you think through all of this as you are developing your roadmap. And then finally, showing success. And I would say that every single year, you use last year's success to raise the bar, to help with percentages of participation. You know, we try really hard to encourage schools to talk less about what the money goal is, and maybe more about participation. I've always found that the more participation you have, you'll hit the money goal. But if all you talk about is how much you want to raise, and then you're not kind of getting everybody to buy into that, it can be a challenge, because then you get donor fatigue. You get people who it's, 20% are given 80%. You want to get as many people as possible. Stories of beneficiaries, I think, are really helpful. I think it's cool to show, like in Melanie's example, if you're going to use annual fund donations to hire the nurse, then maybe put out a newsletter that shows all the kids with the school nurse. That is important information. And again, pictures of success, pictures of kids using new facilities upgrades, pictures of kids using new equipment. Those kinds of things are really helpful to tell the story. So let's switch gears and talk a little bit about calendar, because for me, one of the things we were talking about beforehand is that in a school where you don't have, and this is important for a school that does have a development department, but for me, it was critical because I did the annual fund myself as a head of school. And so preparing a calendar helped me tremendously to know when to do things. And so phase one was typically the preparation for the annual fund campaign. I worked May through August getting prepared for whatever it is we were going to do in phase one. So what does that look like? Well, that's to create a team. It's to create logos and collateral, videos. If you're going to do a video timeline of events, those are primary tasks, but I'd like to throw it to Melanie and let her talk a little bit about how she prepares.
Well, we shifted to, at All Saints School, we shifted to a 5-week model for our current parents for the actual fundraising asking portion. We were finding that we previously had used like a year-long model, and it felt like we were asking parents all year long about donating to the annual fund. So we shifted to this 5-week model, which has been very successful for us and really concentrates the effort in the fall in that 5-week period. So then parents are very grateful that they're not being asked throughout the year, because then in the spring we have a gala like many of you all do that the Parent Association sponsors. So those are the two big efforts for fundraising at the school. So we really like that concentrated model, which I think a lot of you are probably using now. As far as the leadership team goes, we really strive for diversity on that leadership team. And that doesn't mean just racial or ethnic diversity, but it's diversity in grade levels that the parents represent. It's experienced parents and bringing on some new families to bring them into the loop, as well as people that really enjoy fundraising and those that are a little reluctant that we want to train and bring into the fold. We also have honorary grandparents that help us with our outreach to grandparents, which happens in the spring. So I think looking at your leadership team and preparing them and creating a diverse team is really, really important. And then another thing, as far as creating and educating that team, we're going to talk about that in a little while. But I was a volunteer for 25 years before being hired to do this job at All Saints. But I learned a lot during that time about what volunteers need and want. And every time I work with volunteers, they challenge me to become better at communicating, better at adapting to the times. And so I think it's really important when you're thinking about educating them to make their job as easy as possible. Mm-hmm. So that when you invite people onto the team, you're going to supply them with everything they need to be successful, because everybody's so busy today. It's when you can guarantee to them that you're going to make their job easy and give them all the tools for success, you're going to be able to create a very successful team. And then as far as our theme, the way we do ours, we don't change our theme every year. I found it kind of takes people a couple of years to sort of get the theme. And so we don't change every single year. We change every several years. I love Lisa's idea of doing a unified theme for the whole school. I think that's a wonderful idea that I think we might adopt here. But and then as far as a video, I know some of you all are very small schools, like our school is as well, but there are a lot of great examples of annual fund videos on YouTube that you can search to get ideas, because if you're doing this in-house, it's possible to do it in-house, and it doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be, extremely professional, but I think, we're all moving to video. That's what our parents are used to seeing. That's what's really effective communication-wise these days. So I do encourage you all to create a video that you can use on social media, but it doesn't have to be, I think the point is, it doesn't have to be swanky and, perfect. If you're using children, at the school, it doesn't, I think having a video is important.
Yeah, one of the things that I remember us doing, and we had a guy on staff, he was a youth minister, and he took his iPhone and walked around and did some really fun interviews with kids. And then, of course, he edited them. And then we threw this video out about, well, what do you think about this? Or would you like to play on this kind of equipment that we're trying to raise money for? And it was just, but he did funny, and it was not, and it was clearly, it was an iPhone. And these days, I mean, iPhones can do all kinds of things. So I agree with you about if you can do some sort of video to kick it off, or to really encourage people to give throughout that. It doesn't have to be long. It can be short little snippets, but it's important.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about a timeline. I want to first of all, let's show you. These are a couple of just campaigns that I found that are good, and it just gives you an example of what Melanie's talking about. I see both perspectives on having the big theme, and then I see also value in creating kind of a logo or a brand that goes with that annual fund, because for me, it just people saw the brand and knew that's what we were doing, right? We did the same thing with our gala. They saw the brand and they knew that that's where we were at this point. And I think sometimes we forget that not everybody is like in the school, living, eating, breathing, drinking the school's motto like we are. And so the branding is helpful. This is a timeline that I put together. I'm happy to share this, share this with you. It's just shows kind of how I set it up. What was I doing each month? What was I, usually when I say set letter writers, that's kind of what Melanie was talking about building your team. Your team doesn't have to be big. It can just, but the team helps. Each constituency has a kind of a person that can help you tell the story. So grandparents are talking to grandparents, parents are talking to parents, alumni are talking to alumni. That's helpful. People always said and knew that if I was talking about the school, I was selling the school, right? I'm trying to get people to give. I'm trying to get people to come. But it's a different feel when somebody else is talking about the same information that I was talking about. Any other thoughts about phase one before we go to phase two? Anybody? Lisa, Melanie?
I mean, just to piggyback on the video, I don't want to, I just think it is so important. And now since the pandemic and we have all been home and everybody's making videos, I think sometimes the super fancy videos, even though I love those, they can be so high dollar. I think people feel like some of the ones that are done at home are even more authentic.
Right.
So I think there's pros to both, but videos do so much to tell the story.
Yeah.
And we know people just aren't taking the time always to read all of the texts that we carefully put together.
Yes. Yes. I mean, look, I actually had parents say to me, I don't read your emails.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, thanks for that. But you're right that they were wordy and they were, I mean, we've got to get to a place where people can see the bullet points. So I like that. Okay, let's talk a little bit about, let's shift gears and go into, now we've done our preparation. We've done the work in the summer. Now we're going to start kind of the tough work, and that starts kind of in August. And so we're going to have some primary tasks that we do to begin to educate the constituents about annual funds. So we've done the work. Now is when we're educating and telling the story. We're going to give presentations to the board and faculty. We might do a leadership gift event. We might do work around new parent and back to school events. Talked about the video, email blast. Lisa, tell us a little bit about what you like to do during this phase.
So, if you try to talk to everyone at once, nobody's going to hear you. And so I think it's really important that you prioritize your donors, okay? And you want to break them up and speak to them at different times and really kind of customize a campaign around them. I also think, while you're prioritizing, I think it's super important. You don't want to invest a ton of time and a ton of resources in people who have never made a gift to your school. I mean, you want to touch them, you want to talk to them, but you're better off investing in people who maybe have been giving for the past 10 years every year, or who are your major donors. I think you're absolutely right about targeting new parents. We have a whole new parent letter and packet that we send before the school year starts and right before our new parent breakfast. I don't like to spend a lot of time at that new parent breakfast talking about budgets and annual funds. So I like them to get that information in advance and then lightly touch on it at the new parent breakfast. When it comes to faculty and staff, I used to spend, it would seem like months and months just trying to get to 100% faculty staff participation. Now I'm so excited because, we've able to create a campaign where we're able to get to 100% in about 72 hours. Now that again is wrapping a campaign around our faculty and staff and creating a situation where we're targeting them. When things are in person, there's an all faculty and staff meeting that everyone is required to attend. So I'm going to set up our donation location. I'm going to have our t-shirts. They're going to have an email in advance knowing what's happening, and we're kicking it off, and then make it convenient, So I think if you really dig deep, focus on who you want to prioritize and what the best way to reach them and motivate them, and the time of year as well, of course, you'll see success.
Yeah, Lisa, one of the things that I really, I would do pretty regular in August is I tried to get my board and faculty on board and finish that part of the constituency before we even sent anything out to our parents. And that was a little bit easier with our board because boards are conditioned to be givers. And so I would go to the board in early August and say, here's your pledge card. Here's what we're doing. Here's how it's going to look. I would love for you to get your pledges in before this date so that we can tell the story that 100% of our board are giving. And then I did that with the faculty, and I agree with you. But one thing I would like to point out about the faculty, we're not asking faculty members to give large, huge donations. And I said that regularly to my faculty. I'm not asking for that. What I'm looking for here is participation. I don't care what you give. I don't care how you do it. If you want to give, a $25 gift or a $30 gift, and you want to spread it out over 2 or 3 months, we made it convenient to our business manager would be at that meeting, and she would say, I'll do it however you want to do it. I can take it out of your paycheck if you'd like for me to take it out of your paycheck. It's the same concept of making it easy to give. I think that's a great point. But rest assured, lots of people will go, well, our faculty, some of them don't make enough money to be givers. Well, let me tell you that they want to participate. And as long as they feel loved and cared for and told, you don't have to, we're not looking for huge gifts. We just want we want to be able to say to the constituency, to the parents, 100% of our faculty is invested in this annual fund. That sends a really strong message. And so I would encourage you to do it that way. The other thing that I would say about the new parents and the back to school events, I agree with you 100%. New parents, almost, unless they come from independent schools, they're not even going to know what an annual fund is, or even realize that schools like ours are asking for donations. They don't know that. And so that's a really important education point, I think, to make. And if you do it well in your new parent orientation, then you're getting that message out. It's not so hard when you're trying to ask for gifts from your parent constituency.
And, I was going to add something about that with our new parents. We found exactly what you're saying, Mary Catherine. A lot of our families are coming from either a public school background, or we have international families, or whatever the case may be. And so they are really mystified as to why, we are being asking them for money. And so a few years ago, we started with my head of school and I meet individually. Of course, it was by Zoom this year, but individually with all of our new families in about a 2-week time frame for about a 30-minute welcome conference, because we have just found that even in a large group setting, people may have individual questions that they don't ask, and it's not all about the annual fund by any means. It's about being part of the community and kind of what our values are, and being part of the parent association, and sort of how are they doing so far in the year. So it's just a time to touch base, especially for the head of school, to meet the new families. So we have found that is really helpful. And then I spend just a few minutes sort of explaining why for the fund. Fund. And we've gotten really great feedback about that, because it does give us a chance to do the education piece of it, which then once they have that information, that's with them all the time they're at school, and they actually understand, and you have a face-to-face time, which is such a gift to us as fundraisers, to have that face-to-face time to be able to explain our case.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. So I can't stress this enough, that for sure your board, 100% of your board giving before you give that out to the constituency sends a really strong message. And the opposite is true. Not having 100% of your board giving also sends a message. And so I think as you are trying to educate your school board on what that looks like, I think it's important for you to try to articulate that. And again, you're going to have board members who can't give big gifts, and that's okay. We're not looking, I never found, I don't think I ever had issue with how, what, if I'm trying to raise $100,000, I'm going to get there if we have as many people giving as possible. It's not about that everyone gives $1,000 gift. It's about everyone's participating, everyone's buying in, everyone understands. It's just really important. So I can't stress that enough. So other things to consider with education. So I did do at times, not every year, what I like to call a leadership event It was when I was really trying to cultivate maybe a group of people that were going to give a little bit bigger gift. And so I would do a leadership event. I did it sometimes at the school. Sometimes I did it at the home of one of the leadership givers. So if I had a big giver that was willing to offer their home, we would do kind of an invitation event that invited people that maybe, kind of to Lisa's point, touched on some givers. Maybe they were givers a $500 in our constituency. $1,000 or more was a leadership gift. Now, again, that changes depending on the school. But if I had somebody that was at a $500 level and I really felt like they could give more, that's somebody I would invite to the leadership event. And then we would have the board chair talk. I would talk. We would have a couple of parents talk about why they're leadership givers, maybe a grandparent. And then we would hand out those, and this would be before we sent that the information out to the general public, because what I really liked is being able to send out brochures starting in September that said, we've already raised X amount of dollars. The board is given, the faculty is given, and we've already got $20,000 towards our $100,000 goal. So that's one thing that I did. Frequently asked questions is something I sent on the regular. What is it? Why is it? Why are we asking for money? What, some basic kind of nuts and bolts around what the annual fund is. Some people like to read that stuff. Some people don't, but I tried to make it as interesting as possible and tried to make it as something that people would read. And then of course, again, the idea of a kickoff video, an email, hey, we're starting our annual fund. That's important. So what we did, go ahead.
Back to the leadership recognition.
Sure.
Just another idea or perspective on that is we did a leadership event for many years, and you know how things are kind of have a life cycle of interest.
Yes.
We were at the end sort of struggling to get people to attend. And then we got some feedback from parents about, well, we'd rather spend that money, have that money go to the school than have it pay for an event. And so, that ebbs and flows. But so now what we do, we've gotten our students involved, and this is something really simple and it costs nothing. But we have our middle school students for our leadership givers, which at our school also are $1,000 and above. Our students do a handwritten note that details, and we educate the students about what the money is going towards specifically at the school. And so they write handwritten notes to all the leadership givers, and they incorporate it into their English class in the unit where they learn how to write a proper and heartfelt thank you note. So it kind of integrates into the curriculum.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
And really, we've gotten such great, it's also it's great marketing as well, because people that receive those are so impressed with the quality of the writing and the thoughtfulness of the notes. And so that has been a really effective way to thank those leadership givers. And we may go back after COVID to an event, because people will want an event, where they get to see each other again. But for now, that's been a real effective recognition for those people.
Yeah, I think that's really a good point. And I think that the more we get the students involved, the better, personally.
Yeah.
I agree. Just to piggyback on that, Melanie, I love that idea. I think it's so important to showcase your program at all of your events as best as you can. For us at our major donor event, we have a building called the Center for Innovation and Design. And so we've got some laser cutters, and our students would have a competition to create an ornament. And it was built into their innovation and design class. And so the team that ended up having their ornaments selected would produce the ornaments as our little gifts for at the event. And then we create a little card kind of telling the story about who created the gift and what program it was a part of. So
that's a great idea.
Yeah, I think showcasing your program is so important.
Yeah. Okay, so let's now go to the next phase, which is the actual, what I like to call the annual fund month. It's kind of what Melanie referred to earlier around, okay, we're kicking it off. I usually try to do it in the month of September. Sometimes it would bleed over into October, depending on when I could get it out. But it's the basic tasks are that this is when a leadership member sends a letter to parents. We send out the brochure that has the pledge card in it. We begin a class contest. We do reminders all during the month, and we are writing thank you notes all during that month as people are bringing in gifts. And I want to touch on the class contest a little bit and just tell you that I pushed back on this for years and years because I just felt like that it would create problems, that parents would go, well, I can't afford to give and you're punishing my child or whatever. And so what I finally did is I just said, we're doing this participation contest. We don't care what you give. We just care that you give. We're just trying to get 100% participation from our parents in this event. And it was very simple. There were a couple of things that we did. I started with every single week, any class that hit 100% participation got this big fat red ribbon on their door. They got a picture. We announced it on Friday. They got a picture with their whole class, and they got a free recess and ice cream sandwiches. And I am telling you, those kids loved it, right? And so we did that and so the momentum would begin when the first class that hit and they got it, and people saw them out on recess having free recess. Then they were like, oh, let's do it. And it really did become less about, it wasn't about money. It wasn't about how much I'm giving. It's about that we're participating. And did I have a couple of parents get irritated? Yes, for sure. Did I let that stop me? No, because those parents that were irritated enough to come to me, what I always said to them was, look, we're not looking for you to give a big gift, but we are looking to build this community of giving. And we are looking for people to understand why we're doing this in the first place. And so once we were able to get that contest going, it was really helpful to get the participation from the parents. I know that I've seen schools that are doing things like an all school pancake breakfast or, all kinds of things that are really not difficult. But it was helpful.
I was going to say one thing that we have found is that our parents love our teachers. So anything that is a reward for the teacher,
yep,
is very, very popular. So the last few years, it's very simple. It's not even it's low cost, because of course we're always thinking about what is the lowest cost for the biggest effect. But the class that reaches 100% participation first, again, like you said, it's the participation that matters, not the amount. The teachers at that grade level get a dinner out.
Yes.
With their spouses. And that is a simple thing, and it doesn't cost much, but it does really spark competition. And another thing that we have done, instead of the leadership event for our parents, is that once the whole school reaches 90% participation, then there's like a little party for the teachers. And
right.
Parents seem to really want that even more than a celebration for themselves, because they know how much, especially these days with COVID, and well, we didn't have a party this year, but they want to honor the teachers, with in whatever way they can. So that's a motivation at our
school. We did that too, to flip that around. Yes, I think you're absolutely right about that. And we also did every class that got 100% participation got into a drawing where they would get a parents' night out, a free parents' night out. And so like all the parents in that class would get 3 hours of free childcare. We did it in our gym. We brought the kids in. That class got to be, usually I would then hire the teachers so they could make extra money to be able a part of that. And so I think you can do both. I think it depends on, I love both of those ideas to get everybody excited. So again, during Annual Fund Month in September, we're sending out the brochures. There is a really important to create a way to give online. I cannot stress this enough. PayPal, whatever it is that you do, however, whatever platforms you use, we used PayPal, but every single time I sent reminder letters, I sent the link. Every single time we talked about, we texted things, we sent the link. If teachers were reminding, we sent the link. Because truthfully, I mean, nobody is writing checks anymore. People just don't do that as much. And so it's just so much easier just to hit the link and give. And so I encourage you to do that and to provide a way to give online. Other things that worked really well for me, one was a leadership gift banner. So we had banners at all of our drop off and pickup areas. We had 3 of those. And we had just basically banners that said who the leadership gifts were. And so if you gave $1,000 or more, you got your name on a banner. And I'm here to tell you, people like banners. People like to put their name on a banner. And I remember the first time we did this, and I had some people call and say, what do I need to do to get my name on that banner? And I'm like, well, you need to give a little bit more money. And they were like, done. How much? But these are people that I would never have, if I'd have said, would you give a little more money? They'd be like, no. But as soon as I gave them a banner with their name on it, who knows? Every constituency is different, but that really worked. I did a lot of signs around campus. We did thermometer banners. I did email blasts of throughout that month of what teachers and parents and students were grateful for about the school. So we highlighted people within the community to talk about why they were grateful for St. Albans or why they were grateful for the playscape that the annual fund paid for or whatever. We talked about a class participation contest. And then we did, at the end of the event, we did an end of drive event. It's kind of like what y'all are talking about, but this was for everyone. It was for the whole school. We kind of took a whole day off of school because you know me, Enneagram 7, always like fun. Why not take the whole day off and not do anything but play? And so we did that, and we invited parents to come up for lunch. We did a food truck. And that was a thank you that was kind of our way of thanking everybody. And it really worked well because instead of an event where we just invited the parents and they had to get childcare, we just said, come up here. You've already got childcare. Your kids are going to play all day. And that also encouraged them to participate because their kids were going to have a good day. So let's go to phase 4, and that's just the appealing to other people other than parents. And I think depending upon what your constituency looks like, there are lots of schools where they don't have a good grandparent base. So appealing to grandparents is hard. But they have a great alumni base. And then the opposite is true for other schools. I've run into some schools who really had success with grandparents, specifically some preschools. Preschools have a tendency to have a lot of success with grandparents because, their grandparents are just all into everything that their little 3 or 4-year-old is doing. So on your final appeal and on your follow-up, and Melanie's going to touch a little bit on follow-up, but not everybody does phone calls. Some people do, some people don't. There were years that I did phone calls and years that I didn't. Most of the later years, I didn't have to do that. We did do Grandparents' Day letters out around Grandparents' Day. Parishioner letters usually did not coincide with the every member canvas. If you are an Episcopalian, you know that usually October is where the churches are trying to get pledges in for the next year. And so we tried to really not, because we were a parish day school, we tried not to get in the way of what the parish was doing because a lot of our parishioners were giving to both. And so we did our stuff in September and they did theirs in mid to late October. And then we always did an end of year appeal. I usually did my parishioner letters in January. And so I stayed far from the pledging at the church. But I also did a May appeal and I did thank you notes and I did handwritten thank you notes. It was a lot of work, but I think it makes a difference. So Melanie, what are your thoughts on final appeal?
Well, as far as Grandparents' Day goes, it's a huge event at our school. Well, it was virtual this year, but it's a large event. So we have our honorary grandparents for our Fund for All Saints speak at Grandparents' Day in our chapel, which is attended by all the grandparents who come. So it's a huge time for outreach to them. And so that's one thing. If you're not doing that, you might want to consider, and it fits in well because it doesn't seem crass at that event, because they're talking about how they love the school and what it means to them and to their grandchildren and their family. So it fits really well in that program. And as far as follow-up goes, I know that we're all in the season right now of follow-up, at least I am. And I wish that everyone who pledged would remember to pay their pledges and do that in a timely way. But I think the frustration sometimes is that we have to do it. And I think if we just accept the fact that it's human nature to forget and to have other things come first before paying their annual fund pledge, that we could kind of put that aside, that emotion aside, and realize that is just part of our job.
Right.
Follow up. If we don't, and last year we did a little less follow up because of the whole COVID experience, and our families had lots of changed circumstances where they weren't able to pay their pledges because of income or job loss or whatever. But typically we have almost 100% of our parents that pay their pledges, but it doesn't happen automatically. So I think it's just something we have to accept as fundraisers, that is part of our job. And almost everyone who makes a pledge intends to pay it. It's just, it may take multiple outreaches to them.
Sure. Yeah, I agree with that. And typically, our business office would kind of take the lead on that, especially if there was a pledge. And we'd send out reminders. Hey, just a reminder, this is your pledge and this is what you've paid on it. And that's helpful. Yeah. Lisa, you have thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think you're right, Melanie, and just accepting it's part of our jobs. We do send letter reminders in October, November, December. Come January, we're going electronic. And it's so important, as you stated earlier, that people can give online.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Critical.
I think the theme around that, to me, with all of it, is the more convenient you make it, the more likely it is that people are going to give. I don't believe that people just don't want to give.
Yes, I agree.
But we're all busy and everyone's running around trying to just get everything done. And when you make it easy for me by sending me an email, and I can just quickly go on and hit PayPal, and it automatically goes to my account, and I hit what I want to give, and it takes me 10 seconds, I'm in. Yeah. But if I have to download a form and fill it out and then find a stamp, I'm not doing it. It's just not going to happen. And some folks are still writing letters and putting stamps and putting them in the mail, and that's great. We have the opportunities for them too, but you're right. We've got to be able to change with the times and be willing to give a variety of ways to give. And I think that's true, especially with grandparents, because some grandparents are not online. And so you've got to have the ability to give them that pledge card and then have them write that check and all of that. So, and I can't stress enough, you guys, about follow-up and thank you notes. I can't think of anything worse than being a big giver and hearing nothing back, or just getting the end of year tax statement. We've got to be better than that. And so it's really important. It goes back to the whole concept of engagement. Why are we asking you to give? Donors need to feel loved and cared for, and like we appreciate what they're doing. And so I think that's really important. So I want to stop right there. We've got about 10 more minutes, and just to see if you guys have any parting thoughts. David, if you have any parting thoughts or anything we've missed. If we have questions, you can throw them in the Q&A box.
Yeah, absolutely. Participants, if any questions are coming up, make sure to throw them in the Q&A. This is a great opportunity to have any of your questions answered about the annual fund. The only thing I wanted to highlight is the importance of 100% participation.
Mm-hmm.
So that 100% participation from your board, non-negotiable, in my opinion. I'm kind of ornery about that topic. But if you're on the board, you need to, that you shouldn't be spending a lot of energy trying to get your board to 100%.
That's right.
If that's indicative of a board member's frustration, that needs to be addressed, that needs to be hashed out, and then the difficult conversation needs to be had about whether or not we need to continue serving on the board. That's obviously a larger conversation that involves the Committee on Trustees, et cetera, but that's just a non-negotiable. And same with faculty as well. Again, we're not looking for transformative gifts in these situations, but it is just completely, it's a challenge to not be able to launch a campaign without being able to demonstrate the full support of the faculty and the full support of the board. So that's the only thing I wanted to highlight.
Yeah. So ladies, any parting thoughts that you have?
I was just going to go back a little bit to the training of your volunteers. One thing that I always think of it as an opportunity to educate ambassadors for your school for the future. We talked about that in our pre-conference meeting, but because I think you have them and you're able, in a captive kind of way, you're able to explain a lot of things about the school, about the way the school finances work. We always show like a graph of our expenses and our revenue so that they can see how much emphasis we put on teacher salaries and keeping those as high as possible. They see the gap that the annual fund brings into our revenue to make it all work. And so once they kind of understand those big financial pieces, then, and they buy into the mission of the school, and they are going to go out into the community and be your ambassadors for life. And so I really think that training that you're providing for that leadership team has dividends that you don't even realize at the time. And so I just can't emphasize enough training those leaders and those volunteers and making their jobs as easy as possible. I know we provide everything from, scripts for phone calls. People don't want to make phone calls anymore. So it's rare that they actually get on the phone with someone, but we provide scripts for text messages, for sample emails that they can send. And we are really careful about communicating as soon as one of their donors makes a gift. And then, there's very close communication with our volunteers so that they feel supported and that they're able to be successful and feel successful in the effort. So I just, going back to that training of your volunteers and educating them, I think that's a really critical piece.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I think it's a marketing effort as well. Yes. Remember, every person that gets the story and then will go out and tell the story is not just for development, it's for marketing.
Yes.
So Lisa, parting thoughts?
I think what's helped us, we kind of, going back to your calendar that you had at the beginning of the year, your campaign calendar. I think when you're prioritizing your donors and wrapping a campaign around those different constituents, if you can add in some sort of sense of urgency to make that particular group commit to a gift. So for example, as Melanie mentioned, they have their 5-week parent campaign. We run a similar campaign. It's in October, it's 4 weeks, and it's Pledge Month, where we're really focusing on parent participation. And to your point, I'm also very sensitive about rewards for students and having anybody, hurt feelings and whatnot. But for that month, we run a campaign, the first grade level, to reach 100% participation will get their class on the billboard that we have out across the street from our school that we have all year long. But we don't announce the winner until the end of pledge month. And so it really, to your point, Mary Catherine, it helps to build that momentum and excitement on campus. And then, you know, certainly every grade level that reaches 100% participation will participate in our pancake and pajama party at the end of the year.
Right, right. No, I love that. And I think you're right about that. The more we can create excitement, the better we're going to do. So, well, that's it, folks. It's just at the top of the hour. And I want to say thank you to Melanie and Lisa. Thank you so much for your time and energy and your expertise. And I know that that what you have to say and what y'all are doing in your schools is great. And so the more we can share, spread the wealth and share ideas, the better, I think. So that's all from my end.
Thank you all so much. And thank you, participants, for joining us today. And those of us that are watching the recording, we appreciate it. And as always, thank you for all the things that you do for your school. Lisa, Melanie, thanks for spending some time with us today.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Y'all have a great day.
Thank you.